Why good small businesses still run into cash flow trouble. Some small businesses are good at the work, respected by their customers, and still constantly feel financially tighter than they should. That is one of the more frustrating realities of running a small business. Because when cash flow feels strained, the owner often assumes the problem must be obvious. Maybe there is not enough work. Maybe the market is quiet. Maybe customers are spending less. Maybe it has just been a difficult month. And sometimes those things are true, but very often cash flow trouble begins much earlier than the bank balance makes obvious. It starts upstream. It starts in weak pricing, loose quoting, poor payment discipline, slow invoicing, unclear scope, and work that feels busy but not rewarding enough. So in this video, I want to look at why good small businesses still run into cash flow trouble, and why the pain often begins long before the owner feels it fully. The first thing to say is that being good at the work does not automatically make a business financially strong. That sounds obvious, but it gets missed all the time. A business can be competent, hardworking, well-intentioned, and even well-liked, and still be commercially fragile, because capability and financial structure are not the same thing. Doing good work matters, but if the work is poorly priced, badly scoped, paid late, or delivered under weak commercial terms, then the business can still feel constantly under pressure. That is why some owners feel confused. They think, we are busy, we are doing the work, customers seem happy, so why does the money still feel tight? The answer is often that busyness and financial health are not the same thing. A business can be active without being solid, and that is a difficult truth because activity feels reassuring. When work is coming in, it is easy to assume the business must be healthier than it really is. But cash flow problems often begin earlier, in the decisions made before the money arrives. Take pricing, for example. If prices are too low, the business may stay busy but still fail to retain enough margin to feel stable. That creates pressure very quickly. There is less room for delay, less room for revision, less room for a slower month, less room for customer awkwardness, less room for simple human error. And that means the business becomes more fragile than it needs to be. Then there is quoting discipline. Some small businesses quote too loosely because they are trying to keep things easy, friendly, or fast. They give rough numbers. They leave too much open to interpretation. They fail to define what is included and what is not, and they often underestimate the true cost of the work. That may feel flexible in the moment, but it creates uncertainty later, and uncertainty usually becomes pressure. Then there is invoicing. A surprising amount of cash flow pain comes not from a lack of work, but from delays in converting completed work into actual money. Invoices go out late, payment terms are vague, late payment gets tolerated. Owners delay awkward conversations because they want to preserve goodwill. Again, all of this is understandable, but understandable does not mean harmless. Because every delay puts extra strain on the business, and over time, that strain starts to feel normal. That is another danger with cash flow trouble. It often becomes familiar before it becomes dramatic. The owner gets used to juggling, used to waiting, used to feeling slightly squeezed, used to hoping next month will feel easier. And because the business is still functioning, the underlying weakness does not always get named properly. It just becomes part of the emotional weather of the business. That is exhausting. Because when cash flow is weak, the owner is not just managing money, they are managing tension. They start making decisions from pressure instead of clarity. They may say yes to work they should not take. They may chase turnover instead of margin. They may keep prices low to avoid friction. They may avoid hard conversations because they do not feel they can afford to lose the customer. That is where cash flow stops being just a financial issue. It becomes a judgment issue. It affects confidence. It affects boundaries. It affects decision-making. and it quietly shapes the culture of the business. So what is the better way to think about it? In my view, the first step is to stop treating cash flow pain as though it is always mysterious. Sometimes it is not mysterious at all. Sometimes it has a shape. And the right question is not just, why is money tight? The better question is, where is the money really leaking? Is it leaking before the quote? Inside the scope? In the pricing? In the invoicing? In the payment terms? In the owner's reluctance to enforce boundaries? That is a much more useful line of inquiry, because once the pattern becomes visible, the issue becomes easier to address. The aim is not to turn a small business owner into an accountant. The aim is to build a business that is less financially fragile. A business where effort turns into reward more reliably. A business with stronger margins, better discipline, clearer terms, and less quiet strain sitting underneath the weak. That does not remove all difficulty, but it does make the business stronger. And for many small businesses, that strength comes less from dramatic change and more from tightening the commercial logic in places where money quietly slips away. So yes, good small businesses still run into cash flow trouble, but often the real problem is not competence. It is that the business has been allowed to operate with too much financial looseness for too long, and that looseness becomes expensive. If this kind of practical small business thinking is useful to you, I have built the Small Business Advantage audio field guide for busy small business owners who want clearer thinking on pricing, positioning, promotion, and risk. You can explore it at TradShack.com.